Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily today, discussing Sean Payton. It's an emergency daily. Are we live, Sam? Did we go
No,
live?
no,
Okay,
we're
we
not
didn't go
live.
live.
We will be soon, though.
We're like as live. Doesn't really matter. But
Right.
it's happening
Live to
because
tape.
live to tape is what they say in the industry, Sam. That's right. We're live to tape talking Sean Payton retiring or stepping away. We've heard both from the New Orleans Saints. Of course, immediately this brings the Dallas Cowboys rumors back to the forefront. Sean Payton used to work for the Dallas Cowboys under Bill Parcells, and these rumors have always been out there. But yeah, Sean Payton out for the Saints. What does this mean for Payton? What does it mean for the Saints? What does it potentially mean for the Cowboys, Sam?
I don't know. I think all the sort of trade talks are a little bit premature. I think it sounds like people were sounding out Sean Payton anyway about going somewhere else and potentially acquiring him, whether it's Dallas, whether it's Chicago. There were teams out there that were potentially interested. It doesn't really sound like Payton was too interested in them. And the fact that he's retired, I don't know, that kind of suggests to me that he's not wild at that as a concept. So, but I think what is interesting is like, what does this do for the Saints? Like Sean Payton has been one of the best coaches in the NFL since they hired him. We're talking 15 years worth of play a legacy there that's as good as anything in the league outside of Bill Belichick. So obviously they're going to miss that. The other thing that I think is important to address is, is this idea that the Saints are in salary cap hell, and like Sean Payton has jumped ship right now that Drew Brees is no longer there. It's like, oh, the day of reckoning has finally come. It's time to pay the piper, and Payton doesn't want any part of that, so he's bailing. I don't think that's true either. For a start, the Saints aren't in salary cap hell and never are. Like, this is the way they operate with the salary cap. They're, I think, over the cap by 75 million or something right now. They can trim 80 million without having to do anything, without having to cut anybody, just by moving money around, converting base salaries to roster bonuses and stuff. So this idea that like Peyton's bounced because the situation is a nightmare, other teams are going to swoop in and just like pick that roster apart and grab anybody of any kind of caliber, that's not right. Like, that's just off.
That might not be true, but there's some truth to there's less flexibility in New Orleans to go build the roster through free agency. They might not lose their entire team, but even just last year, say, not being able to re-sign a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, who would have been useful for them. I mean, it does add up a little bit with their ability to maintain players. But either way, I do think the part of the Drew Brees retirement, and now Sean Payton had to go through 1 year of post-Drew, and it worked pretty well with Jameis Winston for a while. Jameis gets hurt, and then it's dealing with Trevor Siemian. It's dealing with Taysom Hill, who apparently maybe isn't the next Steve Young for Sean Payton. We're not going to be able to see that play out. I think there's elements to that, right? Being a part of finding the next quarterback. Maybe that just wasn't enticing, or it's just, man, he was there 15 years. That's a long time, and after a while, you have a lot of success and you did a really good job there. And it is time to move on, whether it's in, personal life, whether it's to broadcasting, or whether there is this deep down, maybe we end up in Dallas to finish the career. But there are a lot of those rumblings out there, whether it's Dallas or not, that this is a step away or a recharge, Sam. It's just recharging here in his late 50s and could be back at some point.
Yeah, and remember the thing with like the not having the money, the flexibility to bring back in Emmanuel Sanders. Like, last year was a weird year with the salary cap shrinking and COVID implications and all those kinds of things. Like that, that's the one risk, I guess, of the strategy that the Saints tend to adopt with their salary cap approach, is that if something weird happens in a year like that and the cap unexpectedly shrinks, you have bigger problems than other teams because you never really built that into the strategy. But now the cap's skyrocketing again, and the Saints strategy is fine. Like, they're going to have plenty of flexibility. I do think there's a pretty good chance that, like, the man does just want to recharge. Like, this is the time for it, right? Drew Brees is gone. You thought maybe you could keep winning with everybody else, and because you'd won games with Teddy Bridgewater and whoever else needed to step in and be the quarterback with Drew Brees injured, Jameis Winston goes down. It wasn't going incredibly well with Jameis Winston. And then the combination of Trevor Siemian and Ian Book and Taysom Hill, like, you just weren't capable of winning games with those guys on this roster. So, maybe you thought it was going to be easier than it was. And now when you're kind of looking at how this is actually going to look in a post-Drew Brees world, maybe he is just looking at it and saying, you know what, I could do with a break for a while. And this is a pretty good opportunity to do that. Maybe we'll come back in a couple of years. Maybe it's with the Saints. Maybe it is with Dallas. Maybe it's with somebody else. But now makes sense for me to chill for a couple of years and do a bit of broadcasting.
We're down to just 4 teams remaining in the NFL playoffs, and that means only 4 teams left for you to bet on at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 56, new customers can get 56 to 1 odds on any team. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. Not a new customer? You can still experience the conference championships with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF and get 56 to 1 odds on any NFL team. Bet just $5 and win $280 in free bets if your team wins. It's promo code PFF for 56 to 1 odds at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older in New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsport for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, what about potential replacements here for Sean Payton? I think Dennis Allen, defensive coordinator, is probably the most obvious name here. He has done a great job with that defense. Remember, after a bit of a slow start, but over these last couple of years, the Saints have been among the very best as far as their secondary, matching their secondary with their pass rush. And I think of all the teams, I always mention this, I think of all the teams around the NFL, they could play high-level championship defense as well as any team around the league. And it's tough to do it week in, week out, but Dennis Allen really had those guys cooking over these last few years.
Yeah, he did. I think Allen makes a lot of sense from a kind of continuity standpoint. But it's interesting to see what direction the Saints want to go in. This is the first opportunity for a clean break and a new direction that they've had for so long, because it's been Sean Payton, it's been Drew Brees. I don't know if you want a continuity kind of hiring, because the things that made those guys so successful aren't there anymore, right? Sean Payton's gone. Drew Brees, one of the greatest quarterbacks of his generation, is no longer there. So there's not that much to try and stay contiguous to. You need potentially a clean break. So they're right in the market with all of these potential coaching hirings. I guess, obviously Allen is a part, but Kellen Moore's offense has a lot of similarities to what Sean Payton has done in the past. And he's, one of those kind of hot coaching commodities. Remember, Joe Brady was a guy that came from this system and had a lot of success before the luster kind of came off his star with the Carolina Panthers this year. So there's definitely some interesting options out there.
The other thing I was curious about, if Sean Payton was coming back, I think the rumors of the Saints, who don't have a starting quarterback necessarily next year unless you believe in Taysom Hill, the Saints could have been the team that was rumored to maybe go get a Derek Carr, and say, look, Sean Payton, give Derek Carr to Sean Payton, right? And that can be magic in the NFC South. We don't necessarily have that. I also wonder, does the entire team building strategy, as you were saying, pushing the cap money and all that stuff, does the whole thing change? Because that strategy was kind of to go all in for Drew Brees. We started to see the residual effects last year. Maybe everything's changing from the top down in New Orleans, including, of course, the coaching staff. And maybe you're right. They don't necessarily want continuity with the Dennis Allen coming in there, because it's a whole fresh start in New Orleans from the top down. So yeah, it should be interesting. I was surprised by this news overall, because we know there's already a bunch of coaching openings, and the Saints adding to that with Payton gone, after Payton did a really nice job with, as we mentioned, Simeon and Taysom Hill this year.
Yeah, it is interesting, as you were saying, sort of how much of an impact that will have on the overall approach of the roster. We don't know how much of this very unique approach, can't do that, this unique approach that the Saints have had in terms of, treating the salary cap like a credit card, right? You max it out and then you pay it off every year in their case. As long as you keep doing that, there are no repercussions, right? There's no salary cap hell coming on the horizon. There's none of this idea of sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. It doesn't. As long as you keep paying it off every year, you're fine. But we have no idea whether that was a Sean Payton driven thing, whether that was institutionally from Mickey Loomis or whoever it is, we'll get to find out. Like if they start to unpack that and pivot in a different direction with a new head coach, it sort of shows that Sean Payton was the driving force there. Or maybe this is just how the Saints want to do things, and the head coach has to fall in line and make it work.
So Sean Payton stepping away as head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Let the Dallas Cowboys rumors, they're already going to start. They've already started saying people are going to be talking about it. But the bottom line is Payton's out right now, and I can't wait to see which direction the Saints go. I love Dennis Allen as a potential option, but we could be looking at a clean break and a whole new regime in